In Blender, small details are what make an organic material feel alive or looks like plastic. In the previous video, we saw how to texture a hard surface model, but living things require a different approach. Their surface is made of tissues and is irregular. So, in this video, we're going to be working primarily with hand painting, and we'll use texture min-ups to give depth to the colors we're creating. All of this completely within Blender. And for that, this little dragon is going to help us. You can download it for free using the link in the description. So, with that ready, let's get started. Before we start, there are two things we need to remember. The first is that here in World, we'll have an HDRI image connected for our lighting, as I explained in the previous video. And also in the preferences, remember, it's important to have the Node Wrangler add-on activated. For organic creatures, we also want to start with the base color. But this base color we'll need to paint manually because organic beings have very specific colors that are quite complicated to create procedurally. So we'll paint them. I have this reference right here from which I took the design for this little animal, and I'm going to use it to guide me with the colors. I highly recommend that you always keep references close at hand for the texturing process. To paint it, I will select the model, enter Sculpt mode, and in Viewport Shading, I will select Attribute. And I recommend this studio lighting so that the colors look correct. And before you start painting, I want to remind you that it's crucial to have good geometry on this model. As we are placing the information in each vertex, it's necessary to have quite a bit of geometry. So if we're going to be doing this by means of this method, make sure to give your model good subdivisions. Then I'm going to activate the symmetry here, and we'll begin by applying a flat color to the entire model. Alright, that was the first step, which was extremely simple. And now we're going to begin adding the nuances to this character. This model has a color scheme primarily between violet and blue. So I'm going to look for a violet tone, something more or less like this. I'm going to reduce the strength a little bit, and I'm going to start painting this character, giving it the tones that the reference has. Alright friends, we've already painted all the parts of our character, and it's not a complex painting. The tones are very simple, and if we have a reference, it becomes quite easy to guide ourselves with the colors we want to use. Okay, now let's activate the render view, and when we do, we can see that we still don't have the colors. We just have a gray base color. To activate the colors, we need to create a node called Attribute Color. We place it here, and if we visualize it, here we already have the color of the vertices of our model. This color I connect here to the base color, and we connect the principled, and here we have the result. Just with that, it starts to look quite nice. And that would be the first step of our process. So that's the part that takes the most time, and we've already finished it. The next step now will be to add a little depth to our color. In this case, since we already have the base color, we can now add some curvature and ambient occlusion influence. Here, what I'm going to do first is create a geometry node, extract the pointiness, and connect it to a color ramp. And here, we will combine these nodes to have a little bit of influence. It could be something like this. Here, I'm going to mix these two nodes. And I want the curvature to affect the color values I painted. That is, the dark parts should darken this texture, but without losing saturation. So for that, we can use this value mode. I'm going to connect it. I invert the nodes with Alt-S, and you can see that with this, and making this model much more contrasted. So here I'm going to adjust these sliders a little bit so that the change isn't so aggressive. Ready. It can be something just like that. So this is the original, and if I connect the new one, we gain a bit of depth and contrast. Well, that was the first part, and now I'm going to put on the influence of the ambient occlusion. I grant the occlusion node, and I'm going to mix it with my color. I combine them here. I want the occlusion to be a mask, and the other color to be darker and have a tone similar to my model. Something like that. I'm going to add a color ramp to it as well to control it better. And I'm going to adjust it here. As I increase it, you can see that we gain even more depth in the model. I'm going to increase it, but reduce the intensity, so I make it gray, and adjust this color a little more so it looks less saturated and whiter. To have a bit more control over the saturation, I'm going to set the base color and have a node called Hue Saturation Value, with which I can control the hue, saturation, and brightness. So I'm going to add a bit of saturation. I think 1.15. And I'm also going to adjust the ambient occlusion distance. And a little more the influence. I'm going to make one last adjustment to this curvature here, so that it ends up a little darker overall. And here with this, we would already have much more depth in the color of our model. So that would be the second step, adding a bit of depth using occlusion and curvature. The next step will be to control the reflection of our model, because at this moment it is completely flat, and I want some variation. For that, we can also use the curvature map. What I'm going to do is create another color ramp for the curvature. And I'm going to bring these sliders closer this way. And what I want to do is make the convex parts darker, so they shine a little more, and the cavities, on the contrary, remain clearer. So I'm going to invert these nodes, and that way we'll highlight the details a bit more. The black color, I'm going to make the light gray, something like this. And I'm going to bring the white a little closer. Something more or less like this, very simple. I'm going to visualize the principled node here. I'm going to give it a slightly darker color to better identify the roughness, and this is how we have it by default. And if we connect this roughness, the reflection is much better controlled. The reflection is no longer as balanced or as intense, so it's a subtle change that helps to read our model a little better. I reconnect the base color, and let's move on to the next step. Now, we are going to add a bit more detail to the surface with some relief using the bump matte. Remember that most organic beings have irregularities on their surface, and that is what we are going to try to create. What we are going to do is use a noise texture. Connect it to the object, visualize it, and we want to significantly increase the scale. I'm going to try with 150, and here we have an interesting texture, but I would like to completely remove the roughness so that it feels more organic. Let's create the bump node now. I'll connect the texture to the height, and we'll review it. I am liking this texture, but let's adjust the strength. I'm going to set the strength to 0.2 here, and I'll also reduce the distance to 0.1. It's still a bit intense. I'm going to tone it down more. 0.1. And that's it. I think this is a good point. So we can see it clearly. I'm going to leave a flat gray here, and we connect the bump to the normal. And there we have the result. Look, this texture helps give a very nice detail to our material. The eye shouldn't have this texture, so in the next step we're going to remove it. I'm going to connect the base color, and look how beautiful this character is starting to look. That was the detail we wanted for the surface, and now we're moving on to the next step. The eyes are an extremely important point of interest in any type of creature, and now we're going to see a very interesting method for creating eyes procedurally using the UV mapping in some texture coordinates. The first thing I will do is perform the UV mapping of the eyes. I'm going to come to the UV editing workspace. I'm going to isolate the eyes, entering edit mode. And if I select everything, here you can see all these polygons. The UV mapping is simply the projection of the polygons onto a flat texture. Here by default, I have a cross because I created this sphere from a cube, and the unfolding of a cube is a cross in this way. In this case, I want to control the unwrapping manually. So what I'm going to do is first select this entire loop, then I press Ctrl E, mark seam, to separate this into two different islands in the UV unwrapping. Now with face selection, I select this entire part and press U, unwrap. And we already laid it all out in this UV texture. I do the same with this other area. I give it a U, and I'm going to put it over here in a small corner, so that it doesn't get in the way with the rest. We only need the exterior part. Well, I'm going to go back here to layout, and what we are going to do is create a gradient in these eyes, and control it with the coordinates. First of all, I'm going to take the material from it, and I'm going to create a new one. I put their respective name, eyes, and we're going to add a gradient texture to it, and visualize. We are going to connect it to some coordinates with Ctrl T. And for the coordinates, we are going to select UV. This is what it gives us. Let's select texture here, because we are using a UV. And instead of linear, I'm going to select spherical. And around here, we're already starting to see a bit of the influence. What I want to do now is reposition the location and the scale, so that we have a well-placed circle on the outside. In location then, I set everything to 0.5. Likewise, 0.5 in X and Y. And there, as you can see, this little circle starts to appear. From here, I can adjust it manually, until we find a point that we like for the pupil of our dragon. It can be something like this. I'm going to reappear everything to see how it is located. And I'm going to keep adjusting the size. I'm going to set it to 0.15 and 0.3 so that it looks a little more even. And I'm going to rotate this little eye manually. Here, it doesn't let me rotate it properly. That's because the point of origin is down here. So I'm going to press W, and I select origin to geometry. And now I'm going to rotate it, trying to place it in the correct position. Okay, something more or less around here. So we already have the location, and now we are going to apply the respective colors using the color ramp. I'm going to put a color ramp here, and I'm going to invert the nodes. And there, we already have the pupil colored black. And I'm going to start assigning the respective colors here in the ramp. I'm going to make the pupil a little bigger. The color of the eye, I want it to be slightly yellow. Like around here, I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm going to copy the color. I select this and press Ctrl-C with the cursor over the bar, and then Ctrl-Z on this one here, because I want to make this space a little wider. Okay, and here I'm going to put the colors of the little eye. So this one on the outside, I want it to be kind of red. This one should be orange. And one last one for the pupil that is going to be completely black. So look at how beautiful it's turning out. I'm going to quickly adjust these colors here, and we'll see each other in a moment. Here, I've already finished the little eye of my character. I just adjusted the colors a little bit. And we are going to connect it to our principal node. To finish setting it up, I want to activate the coat here. I'm going to increase the weight to 100%, and I'm also going to increase the roughness a little bit. I'm going to give it 0.06. And that's it then. We would already have our character's little eye finished. And to conclude, let's add some influence from the scattering subsurface. This is going to look especially good on the wings, since it is a thin part that allows light to pass through it. What we will do is simply return to this material. And naturally, I would like to add a bit more brightness to the roughness. I'm going to make this shade a little bit darker because it's very dull. Ready, so that it shines a little more. And now, to give it the influence of this subsurface. First, I'm going to create a light. I'm going to put up an area light, and I'm going to put it behind the wings, so that it stands out more. And I'm going to increase the intensity a little bit. I'm going to set it to 100. So what we're going to do is simply come here to Subsurface, and I'm going to increase the weight completely. And as you can see, our model gets a little noisy. That's because this requires a bit more processing. And on a scale, I'm going to increase it too. It's at 0.05. I'm going to set it to 0.5. I'm going to let it process a little. And that's it. There. As you can see, light manages to penetrate a little through the skin, giving us that translucent effect. I'm going to activate the denoise again, so that we can see it with all the quality. I'm also going to reduce the noise threshold a little bit. We give it a moment. And that's it, my friends. With this, we have completed the entire process of creating professional material for our organic character. I am also quite happy with this material. Let's recap everything we did. First, we manually created the base color, painting it in sculpture mode. Then we added a little bit of influence of the curvature to alter the values, and a little bit of influence from ambient occlusion to give it more depth. We adjusted the roughness, also with a curvature mask. We added a little bit of bumps influence. Finally, we added some influence from the scattering subsurface, besides what we also did for the eyes. And with that, my friends, we've reached the end of this tutorial on creating professional materials for organic creatures using Blender. And if you want to learn Blender from scratch and master not just materials, but also modeling, sculpting, and much more, I invite you to check out my complete Blender course for beginners. You'll find a link in the description. I'm the Parabox, and remember that in every vertex, there's a universe of possibilities. See you in the next video.